Okay, everyone. It sounds like that's working all right. So, welcome to this session on getting to product market fit. So, this session is really all about trying to give you some tips and tricks and strategies and tactics to help you succeed on the AppExchange. So, my name's Tom Cannon. I'm responsible for the AppExchange in EMEA and Asia Pacific. As you can probably tell from my accent, I talk funny. I'm not from the US. So, I'm responsible for everything where people talk funny outside of the US. Before I get started, of course, it wouldn't be complete without one of these. I'm sure you're bored of these already. I know I am. We're not going to make any forward-looking statements today, but please, obviously, bear this in mind. So, in my role running the AppExchange, I have the pleasure and the privilege of working with partners of all types all over the world. And there's one question that kind of dominates my role, my team's role, all we think about, and that is, why are some partners more successful than others, right? Because this drives where we spend our time, where we make the investments of our time, the partners that we tend to double down on. So this is a question that really is paramount to us and something we think about a lot. And over the last few years, I've developed a bunch of kind of thoughts and things that I see successful partners doing. So the idea of this session is to share some of those with you and help you learn from some of the things that partners do. So when we look at what makes a partner successful, there's really three categories of things. The first of those is the team. And I think almost everybody in the room would say, well, the team has to be the most important thing, right? The people are everything. The truth is, there are a lot of great teams that don't succeed. And there are a lot of mediocre teams that do exceptionally well. The guys that invented that thing, Google Wave, you might remember, a few years ago, the sort of real-time document thing. Those were the same guys that created Google Maps. By any measure, these are exceptional engineers. They created one product which really changed the world, and another product that really didn't succeed. So it's not just about the team. That's important, of course, and that can help you, but it's not the only factor, and it's not even the most important factor. The second point might be product. So you've got to have a great product, right? If you don't have a great product, you won't succeed, and the best product win. The truth is, the best product often doesn't win. Windows 95 is perhaps the greatest example of that. Maybe Android is another great example of that. Certainly in the early years, it was a good enough product. And it was a good enough product in a huge market. It turns out there are like 6 billion people who are prepared to pay for a good enough mobile phone that isn't an Apple device. So the key is really, it's about this match of the market and the product. And what Marc Andreessen calls product market fit, which has now become a kind of cliche in the industry, but it's a good way of thinking about how to make a product successful. So what is product market fit? The standard definition is that it is a good enough product in a market that's big enough to sustain you, that satisfies that market. So, when you think of a market, you could have the best product in the world, but if there are only really a few thousand people in the world who are likely to buy it, then you don't possibly have a big enough business, a big enough market to make it successful. Whereas you could have a very small part of a very big market and do incredibly well. So it's about finding a product that's good enough to satisfy a market that's big enough. And of course, in the Salesforce ecosystem, you already have a ready-made marketplace. The question often is, well, how do I know when I've got to product market fit? What does it feel like? And the truth is, you kind of know. I work with partners all the time who know, right? Before you get to product market fit, your sales cycle takes a long time. Your customers are kind of, they like it. They say it to your face, but they don't really seem to be getting value out of it. The feedback is, particularly reviews that you might see are kind of, it's good, it's fine, but they're not overwhelming, and so on and so on. When you get to product market fit, you're selling easily. Your sales cycle is very smooth, it's very quick. And I have partners like this who literally, they do a demo and the customer buys the product. They have product market fit, and you know when you have it. The customers rave about it. They're very willing to go in and do a review. In fact, they want to. The feedback that you're getting is always well, and you're hiring customer-facing people. So this sounds like a kind of pipe dream, but it really is often this clear. Often people are in denial about the fact that they're not there yet, and they want to believe they are. But if you're not seeing at least a few of these signs, you're probably not there yet, and you need to double down and try and get there. So really, if you could summarize this presentation in one sentence, it would be this: that a great product does not necessarily mean great product market fit. And what I mean by this is that every market has its own idiosyncrasies. You know, the sort of app that might be successful on the OS X or the Mac platform might not be successful on Windows and vice versa. Something that succeeds really well in Android may not have the same sort of effect in iOS. So it's about understanding those attributes, those idiosyncrasies, those strengths, those weaknesses, those opportunities, etc., of the environment that you're going into, and about adapting your product to make sure that it fits within that market. So our customers have a bunch of shared expectations, right? There are certain things about our marketplace that are just a feature. You know, people like to customize stuff. They like stuff that gets in that gets implemented very quickly. They prefer a low-code environment, and increasingly we've kind of trained them to expect things like social and mobile, community, and even Einstein these days are part and parcel of the product. So it's about understanding those attributes and bending your product to match those attributes as well as you can. So what I'm going to do now is talk you through 10 tips, tricks, strategies, tactics, whatever you want to call them, for helping you get there. So, number one, this sounds so obvious, it's almost a cliche, right? Design for the user, not for you. I know it sounds like a cliche. As I put the words on the slide, I'm aware of that, but I promise you, I see this more than any other thing in our ecosystem. The classic example is where somebody has a great idea, or perhaps they've even got a great product that they've already built. You know, maybe it sits off platform, it's succeeding in its own right, and they assume because it's a great product that it's going to succeed. So really their focus is on how do I connect my existing product into your ecosystem, and they forget about the user. So when you're thinking about moving into a platform, think about how well you know that customer. So what does your ideal customer look like? This is a step that many people skip over. They just assume that all customers look the same, right? They don't bother to roll their sleeves up and actually figure out what's the name of this person, what role are they doing? You know, who are the influencers in that deal cycle? What do they do on a daily basis? And what is the specific problem that you're solving for them? How big is that problem? Is it a pain or is it a gain? Are you selling a vitamin? Are you selling a painkiller? People will go 3 or 4 times more quickly to a painkiller than they will to a vitamin. So you better understand, is the problem you're solving a pain or is it a gain? Because there's a different kind of inertia that comes into play. How big is that? How big is the market? Is this something which is mission critical to them? Are they feeling it? Because you'll get to that product market fit very quickly if you're solving a major pain point for them, and much more slowly if it's something that really they can live with. Critically, how do they solve it today? If they're on the Salesforce platform today, what are they doing? Are they using email? Are they using spreadsheets? Are they using a competitor? How does that work? What's wrong with that? How can you solve it? How can you prioritize the things that are most painful about that in your product? And how do they use Salesforce? And this is an often overlooked step. You know, you might be selling to a sales user, and you assume that salespeople in Salesforce are just like everyone else you've ever met, including the people that work at your company. It's about really understanding that target user and understanding how they use the product today, and therefore, most importantly, how your product can fit into that workflow. So there's a great way of getting to know the typical Salesforce users. We have these personas. There's a trailhead that does a great job of walking through all of these, and there's a bunch of cards that you can use that will help you unpack each of these. There's some for sales, there's some for service, there's some for analytics and for platform, etc. So this is a great place to start. Of course, it won't tell you everything you want to know. You might have to do some research, talk to people, but this is a great place for getting your head very quickly around the types of users that you might want to target and where you should focus your attention. So yeah, do a search on Salesforce for personas. It's a great resource. So, number 2 is get Salesforce smart. Now this one doesn't apply so much to people who are already in the ecosystem, but it does apply to people who are coming from outside the ecosystem. Perhaps you've already got a product that you've already built and you want to integrate it with Salesforce. A huge mistake that I see is that people learn just a very slim set of knowledge that they need to know in order to integrate their app. For example, they might learn about the bulk API or the streaming API or the REST API or whatever. They might do a little bit of OAuth or maybe look at Canvas. They focus on a very narrow band of Salesforce. And this is a mistake because actually if you want to appeal to the Salesforce user base, you really have to understand the breadth of their experience, the things that they're engaging with, the things that they do. So it's really important to spend some time understanding not just a narrow domain. I don't mean you have to need to go deep on everything, but you have to understand a much broader context of how people are using the product and how they might actually be partly solving your problem already today. So we've already mentioned Trailhead. I'm sure you've already picked up on what Trailhead is this so far if you weren't aware already, but it really is a fantastic resource. But the other way that you can get to Salesforce Smart more quickly is to engage with what we call PDOs. Now, for those of you who aren't aware, a PDO is an organization that solely is focused on developing products for Salesforce ISVs. They develop products for the AppExchange. So they're effectively a systems integrator, a consultancy, but they have specialist knowledge in developing for the AppExchange. So not only do they have technical knowledge, but they also have knowledge around things like user experience and go-to-market. They can help you with your AppExchange listing. But most importantly, they don't just know about things like Apex and declarative development, etc. They know about things like packaging and push upgrades and licensing and how all of those things are going to become mission critical when you start to deploy your product. So invest some time there. If you can't do it yourself, think about a PDO, talk to your tech evangelist, and find out more about it, and maybe just engage with them tactically to help you with certain problems. A security review is a place where PDOs can really, really reduce your time to market and reduce a lot of the pain you might have, but don't leave it to the last moment. Engage with them early on. Number 3, embrace the platform. So, this slide, I guess a bit difficult to read, but this is really an overview of the different capabilities we have in our platform, and it's huge. And the great thing is that most of these capabilities come as part of the agreement that you have with Salesforce. Not all of them, but the vast majority are available to you to use. And so, of course, it makes common sense for you to use those. We want you to use them. We want you to take as much advantage of our platform as possible. But that's not the only reason to do it. The reason to do it is because our customers are embracing the platform, right? 83% of our customers are using AppExchange apps. We've got 4 million installs. This is actually trending towards 5 million this year. Our customers are really embracing the platform. And if you think you're going to succeed by simply building a product and integrating it through an API, then you're likely to be wrong. So our customers tend to have common expectations of the things that they want in an app, right? They want it to be a seamless experience. What they don't want is 12 different user interfaces that all do something broadly similar that they have to swivel chair in between. They don't want to go from one tab to another and have a dramatically different experience. They want it to have a common feel. They want it to be intuitive. They want it to work across devices. They want you to leverage their investment. And they will have made a technology investment, but don't forget, many of them will also have made a very personal investment in the ecosystem. They will have invested many hours in learning how things work, developing their skills, becoming a really valuable asset within their organization. And the more that you can align with the knowledge that they've built, the easier you can make it for them to be a rock star in their company, the more successful you'll be. They don't want silos, right? One of the great things about Salesforce is that once you're in that application, you've got a shared data model, you've got a shared ID, you've got shared workflow, reporting, search. All of those things are common. If you have something which is largely built off platform, most of your data is off platform, that may be right for your application, but you need to find a way to make that very closely integrated with the Salesforce user experience. They want it to be customizable. One size does not fit all. And there's a myth, I think, sometimes that even when you're talking about very small customers, that they're happy to have a standard application. That simply isn't true. That's the one thing that Salesforce has really built its business on, is that people want to bend the application and the applications to suit their needs. They like to collaborate. We've trained Salesforce users, and they've been very receptive to that, and they've really run with it to collaborate with each other to make sure that your application leverages Chatter fully, and make sure that you're making maximum use of the place that they're collaborating today, not just the things that currently work in your industry or specialized area. And make sure it just works. Things like trials, push upgrades, support, licensing. They want all that stuff to work in the same way it works for all of their apps. They don't want to have to learn a different way of doing things simply because they're engaging with a new application. So when you're thinking about your architecture, there are really kind of 4 main buckets that you could consider. On the left-hand side, you've got an API-only connector. And that's a great place to start. It's a fantastic place to start. You can get to market very quickly, start to solve customer problems. As you move through, you might do a UI integration using an iframe, or even hyperlinks or Canvas. And then you start to do a more integrated experience, where you've got a lot of your application off platform, maybe some data, maybe some processing IP that you have, but integrated seamlessly into the experience via APIs and UI built in Salesforce. And then you've got 100% native application. So there is no right and wrong with these. There are certainly extremely valid use cases just to do an API, and I wouldn't disagree with any one of you doing that if that was right for your application. But base it on the needs of you and of your user, not just simply on what's most expedient. And what a lot of people do is they start off by doing the left-hand side as a phase one, moving into a phase two later on down the line. And I'll give you an example of that, and unfortunately I'm not at liberty to share who the partner is. I assure you this is a partner I've worked with personally, this is real data. So, what you can see here is sales numbers, broken down by quarters. So these are real quarters over time. And this partner built an application, largely their IP was held off platform, integrated with us. They did a nice job of the integration, and they had some relative success. Right out of the gate, they had some pretty decent success. But these guys were pretty smart. They knew that that wasn't going to be the end game for them. So whilst they were implementing this very quickly, they had a parallel team working on a much deeper integration. And then after a year, literally 4 quarters, they launched that second phase. And you can see that the effect of that was dramatic. And this company are now the de facto lead in this marketplace. The change stunned us. It's almost precisely the same product, certainly the same intelligence behind it, but the change was dramatic, and this was because the product was much more seamlessly integrated into the experience that the customer already had. So this is what I mean by embrace the platform. Number 4, no surprise here, be lightning ready. This really is table stakes. In fact, for any new application, you need to be lightning ready. So it almost goes without saying now, certainly if you're looking to build something new. But I would ask you to kind of think about this in 2 ways, right? It's a threat and an opportunity. If you're an existing partner in our ecosystem right now, you've probably built a pretty substantial application on our existing infrastructure, Aloha, Classic, all of that good stuff. Well, we're seeing partners come into the ecosystem now who are leapfrogging all of that. They don't have that existing code base to refactor, and they're building from Lightning from the very beginning. They're building radically different user experiences, and they're building user experiences that are much more customizable. You can drag and drop, you can integrate within other parts of the experience. So if you're not thinking about this already, and you're just thinking about the existing kind of backlog of features that you have to load for your, deliver for your customers, really start to think about the opportunity that Lightning might present to you and how you can perhaps leapfrog some of the other people in the ecosystem. Now, when we talk about Lightning, we often talk about it in one big kind of monolithic lump. You're either Lightning ready or you're not. And the truth is, there are actually 3 phases to this journey. So firstly, you've got being Lightning ready. And being Lightning ready really is table stakes now. It's very simple to do. You test your own application. You make sure that everything works. It doesn't have to look like Lightning. It just has to work. And if it works, you submit a case to us and we'll give you the Lightning ready sash. So that's the thing you have to do, because not a single person within Salesforce, and certainly none of our execs, will ever demo your app. They'll never show it to a customer if it isn't Lightning ready. It's just counterproductive for them to introduce something which isn't going to support the latest and greatest technology that we have. But secondly, we have adoption of the Lightning design system. And this is really well suited if you already have an application on the platform which is perhaps built using Angular or React, or one of the front-end frameworks. Maybe you've invested very heavily in Visualforce. Adopting the Lightning design system is a way of looking and feeling like you're a Lightning application, but without having to refactor in everything into a Lightning component. And this is an entirely valid approach. In fact, we designed the Lightning design system specifically to support this approach. So this is not a compromise, this is actually a great thing to do. So if you've got a beautiful app right now that you develop using your own custom look and feel, start to adopt the Lightning design system. Have it look like Lightning, even if it isn't Lightning all the way through. And then lastly, of course, you've got building Lightning components. And I think we all know, any of you who understand Lightning technology, this is a significant investment. Many of our partners have done it, and many have taken a phased approach. And I would just encourage you to look at it and come up with a roadmap and a strategy that suits you. So number 5 is industrialize. One of the kind of red flags to me when I talk to a partner or a prospective partner is, I always ask, who's your customer? And if the answer is everybody, it's a red flag to me, right? Because if you're selling to everybody, you're not really selling to anyone very well. You're targeting every single salesperson in every single industry. Well, that's assuming that these people are very similar. The truth is they're not. People differ dramatically between different industries and between different roles. So one way that you can really succeed in the Salesforce ecosystem is to think very consciously about the industries that you're targeting. Be very mindful about that, and pick the verticals where you're most likely to succeed. It could be that you could sell into every industry, but it isn't necessarily the best way to start, because it means your marketing collateral has got to be very wide, the knowledge and skills of your salespeople have to be very wide. If you can pick a few areas, let's say financial services and telco, where you're likely to succeed, that makes your chances of success so much higher, because you can be much more focused in the way that you talk to these customers, where you engage them, the way you design your solution roadmap. So our strategy in the industry space is very clear. It has two prongs to it. The first is we're building capabilities on the platform that meet the needs of those customer sets. And the second phase, the second aspect, is to partner. And we accept absolutely wholeheartedly that we are never going to build every single solution for every single one of these industries. That is not our intention, and we couldn't do it. It would be naive to think we could, and we certainly don't have all of the industry expertise that many of you have. So it's a two-pronged approach where we build functionality and we partner. Now let me give you an example of how that works in practice. So this is what we call a blueprint. This particular blueprint happens to be for wealth management. And so what you're seeing here is a breakdown of the different things that go on in a wealth management organization. You've got front office, middle office, back office, you've got enablement, you've got some stuff to do with client management. Okay, now if I take that front office layer and I go down one level lower, what you can see here is in dark blue, you've got things that Salesforce does out of the box. In the lighter blue, you've got things that our financial services cloud does, or intends to do on the roadmap. In green, you've got something that's already covered by an existing financial services cloud partner, one of the logos we saw on the previous screen. In gray, you've got the things that really tend to be very specific to a partner, to a customer, integrations, the things that nobody really sells. And in white, what we've got is, not surprisingly, white space. So these are the areas where we're going into these industries, we're targeting customers, but we currently don't have solutions to solve those problems. And we rely on SIs and ISVs to plug those gaps. So if you're focusing on particular industries, talk to your partner account manager, get them to talk to you through some of this stuff, meet the industries team, and find out where you can target your efforts. So, number 6, form alliances. The Salesforce ecosystem, as you can see today, is an incredible place full of partners who are very, very willing to partner with each other. And this, particularly if you're looking to break into other geographies, can be a very powerful way of doing it. If you work with a partner that has a lot of strength, a lot of boots on the ground in a particular region, partner with them, build a complementary solution, can help you get into that market and vice versa. So here's an example of that, an example called Project Unite. So this is a whole bunch of ISVs from both sides of the pond who got together to build a solution, not to build a solution, but to collaborate around an end-to-end solution that solved the needs of customers. So they could go in together, they could share customer conversations, and not force upon the customer to go out and speak to every different point solution individually. So this became very powerful for them. 7,000 leads shared at last year's Dreamforce, 1,500 alone from events in EMEA. So incredibly powerful way of them taking all of these leads that they were getting, sharing them with each other, and going to market together. This is a great example of how forming alliances with other partners can be a really powerful way of succeeding. So, plan for scale before you need to. If there's one thing that is the most common reason why I tend to get involved in customer and partner conversations after the customer has bought the product, it's because of this. It's because when you're building your product in your developer shop and you're testing it on small sets of data, everything works fine. You get your first couple of customers, everything's very hands-on, it works fine. And then suddenly you succeed more than you expected to, and you get a big customer. They've got 1,000 users, they've got 10,000 users. And they'll either, if they're smart, they'll ask up front, what evidence do you have that you can work at this kind of scale? And if you don't have that, it will introduce a delay into the sales cycle, possibly several months while you go back and do all this stuff. At worst, you might get halfway through an implementation and turn it into a red account where this customer is at risk of attriting because of a problem they're having with your application. And that is the worst possible case scenario, because it doesn't just affect that customer, it affects your reputation in the ecosystem. So be thinking about things like large concurrent user volumes. Is it possible that your customers at some point, if you're successful, might have more than 1,000 concurrent users? If it is, you should be testing at that right from the very outset. You should be making architectural decisions based on that possibility. Is it possible that your customers may have millions of rows of data, even for a very small business? If you're capturing, for example, transactions in a ledger, it's entirely possible you might have more than 1 million transactions in a year or two. The last thing you want is to have to start to solve that problem and fundamentally rework all of the batch Apex that you've written in order to meet these needs. So start testing early and often. I can't stress this enough. There's a whole bunch of, excuse me, this clicker's a bit. There's a whole bunch of stuff you can do. First and foremost, talk to your TE, go into the partner community. If you don't have a TE, ask questions. And there's a whole bunch of resources in the partner community, fsdc.co/ISV scale. An enormous amount of stuff there. There are JMeter scripts. There's some free tools for doing the bulk data uploads, etc. Lots and lots of things, demo videos. It's quite an arcane subject. It's not the sort of thing that you would immediately know unless you've done it. So use those resources, get good at doing it, and prepare yourself for the eventuality. Number 7, give some SEs. So SEs, solution engineers, the pre-sales people, as you probably know them, are solution engineers at Salesforce. These guys are critical to your success. If you have any intention of leveraging the Salesforce customer base and the Salesforce ecosystem to sell, you need to understand how these guys work. So for example, understand the organization. They tend to be split by CBU and EBU, enterprise and commercial business, and then they're further split by industry. So figure out who are the SEs that you need to build relationships within those particular regions. Match your SEs to their SEs. If there's one thing that's true, sales and marketing people speak a very different language to sales engineers. And it never goes well when you try and get your salespeople to form these great relationships with SEs. It just ends in disaster because SEs really thrive on trust. They speak to partners all the time. Everyone's constantly pitching them. Everyone's telling them they're the best solution since sliced bread. They don't want to hear it. They want people who are going to speak their language, be very straightforward with them, and build trust with them. Give them the key facts only. These guys are busy. Get cheat sheets, get one-pagers, give them stuff that they can use very easily. Keep it simple and focused. Don't drone on, don't tell them your history, don't spend ages showing them your gratuitous logo dump and all of the stuff that you want to tell about the history and how many countries you're in. Give them what they need to know, help them be successful, because they're probably building a demo for something they've got to do the following day. And what they want is the facts and they want to do it quickly. And help them build that demo. Help them do that by building an SE-friendly demo. So what's an SE-friendly demo? This is an example that one of the people who first did this very well was Steelbrick, who we obviously ended up acquiring. And they had a page that you could go to, steelbrick.com/SE demo, and it had a whole bunch of resources there. How to install the demo, a link to download it, a script for setting it up, a place to go for additional information. So it meant that SEs could go and install Steelbrick, show it to a customer without ever having to speak to one of your people. And I know for many of you, that may put you outside of your comfort zone. But it'll put you very much in the comfort zone of an SE, because the last thing he wants at 8 o'clock at night when he's suddenly realizing he doesn't have a solution for CPQ is to get on the phone and talk to a salesperson. He wants to get it in front of the customer, impress them, and then follow up with a conversation. So create stories is the penultimate one. And I can't stress enough that the way that I talk about my partners, the way that my partner account managers talk about their partners, the way that we all do is through the medium of stories. It really is the currency or the unit of sharing at Salesforce. And I always think of events like this and events like Dreamforce create a marketing bow wave in the ecosystem. We invest hundreds of millions of dollars in marketing certain concepts, artificial intelligence, analytics for everyone, whatever that theme is. And it amazes me that our partners don't leverage that bow wave as much as they could. We're talking about artificial intelligence. They're talking about something we were talking about 2 years ago. Attend events like this, listen to what we're talking about, and align your product story to it, because it will make you more powerful, and it will mean that you're leveraging the investment that we're making. Try to showcase a customer if you can, but always showcase some technology. Don't just go in and say, hey, look, we've done this, isn't it great? Find a way of talking about Wave, talk about Einstein, talk about Salesforce DX. You saw Velocity on stage this morning because they've done such a great job of implementing Salesforce DX. So find ways to get a story so that I can go to the product manager or even Alex Dayon and say, look at the great job that my partner is doing with this new technology that we've just released. And think of the dev time that you spend doing these as a marketing expense. So often people don't do these types of activities because they have a backlog of features they have to ship. But actually, doing some of this, even if you carve out a couple of guys, you have a little hackathon to build something, is an incredibly powerful way of having the right story to tell when you're at an event or you're at a booth. So think of it as a marketing expense, not just a development expense. And the last one is, again, a cliche, but I cannot stress it enough, right? Don't stop evolving. We started off in 1990 with a multi-tenant cloud. We didn't realize that over the next couple of decades, we'd all be walking around with supercomputers in our pockets, in a world surrounded by sensors, transferring terabytes of data all around us, and using artificially intelligent machines to process that data. And that's forced Salesforce to continually reinvent itself every single year. It's almost a joke that every single Dreamforce, we come up with a new set of things that we're talking about. But this is not a joke. We're fighting for our life. We're fighting to maintain the growth, fighting to be relevant in the eyes of the market. And we're constantly doing this so that we can become the next version of Salesforce. We're constantly becoming the next version of ourselves. And I encourage all of you to do the same thing. If you're sitting still, if you're not evolving, if you're not growing, you're going to start to lose market share. So I really impress upon you this one more than any others. I have many partners who build a great application and then they rest on their laurels and they start to see other people leapfrog them. So that's my top 10. I hope they were useful. If you have any others, come and tell me afterwards and maybe I'll make that top 11 or 12 or whatever. I'm going to be around for the next 15 minutes or so, so if you want to have a conversation about any of them, please come and find me. And with that, thank you.